The morning sky above Colorado blazed with unusual colors when humanity first learned they weren't alone. Admiral James Stone stood at the reinforced windows of Earth's United Defense Force headquarters, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the strange lights dance across the dawn horizon. "Sir, we're picking up signals. They're like nothing we've ever seen before," reported Lieutenant Mark Wilson, his fingers flying across the holographic display. The young officer's voice carried a mix of excitement and fear that Stone had heard only once before, during the near-miss crisis of 2040. Stone turned away from the window, his steel-gray eyes scanning the underground command center. Dozens of the world's best analysts and military personnel worked at their stations, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of their screens. "Show me," he ordered, moving to the central command table. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the solar system. Red dots appeared beyond Mars' orbit, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each dot represented a ship larger than anything humanity had ever built. "The encryption is unlike anything in our database," explained Dr. Emily Reed, the head of cryptography. Her usual calm demeanor showed cracks as she pulled up streams of data. "But there's something strange about it. The patterns, they're familiar somehow." Stone leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Familiar how?" "Like they've been studying our communication methods. The encryption has elements that mirror our own protocols, but they're far more advanced." Dr. Reed's fingers danced across her tablet. "Sir, I don't think this is first contact. They've been watching us." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Years of surveillance. Years of preparation. Earth hadn't been discovered. It had been studied, analyzed. And now, "Incoming transmission," announced Wilson. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The message appeared on the main screen, automatically translated by their quantum computers. Stone read it aloud, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. "To the governing bodies of Earth. Your planet has been deemed suitable for integration into the Galactic Empire. Resistance is futile and unnecessary. Submit to Imperial authority within one planetary rotation, and your transition will be peaceful. Delay will be met with appropriate force." Stone looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each person present. These were the best Earth had to offer: scientists, soldiers, strategists. They had trained for this moment, even if they hadn't believed it would come. "Get me the president," Stone ordered, "and activate the Guardian's protocol." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, ancient machinery hummed to life. In secret bunkers across the globe, hidden weapons stirred from their slumber. Humanity had never stopped preparing for this day, even when they'd thought they were alone. Within hours, leaders from every nation gathered virtually in the Emergency World Council. The Empire's ships had taken position around Earth's orbit, their massive forms visible even from the ground, dark shadows passing across the sun. "They've been studying us for decades," Stone explained to the assembled leaders. "Our development, our wars, our technologies. But they've made one critical mistake." He brought up the analysis of the Imperial ships. "Their technology is advanced, yes, but it's uniform. Standardized. They believe they've seen everything we can do because they've been watching our official channels, our public developments." A smile crossed Stone's face, not one of joy, but of grim determination. "They don't know about Project Oracle. They don't know what we've kept hidden. And they certainly don't know about the quantum shield grid." The President of the United States leaned forward in her video feed. "You're saying we have a chance." "More than a chance," Stone replied. "We have something they've never encountered in their entire history of conquest: unpredictability. They've built an empire on technological superiority and uniformity. But humanity—" He paused, looking at the representatives of Earth's nations. "We built our civilization on adaptation, on finding ways to survive against all odds." The Chinese premier's voice came through clear and determined. "Then we show them what humanity can do." Stone nodded, turning back to the window where another Imperial ship cast its shadow over the mountains. Send them our response. One message. That's all they get. As the sun set on humanity's last day of innocence, Earth sent its first and only warning to the stars. The Empire would soon learn why humanity's scattered, chaotic development wasn't a weakness. It was their greatest strength. The Imperial Assessment Team arrived at dawn in a sleek silver ship that landed on the grounds of the old United Nations building in New York. Major Tom Wells watched from behind reinforced glass as three tall figures emerged. They walked with the confidence of those who had never known defeat. "Look at them," Wells muttered to Admiral Stone, who stood beside him. "They're not even wearing protective gear. They think so little of us that they're breathing our air without testing it." The aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall, their skin a pale blue that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. Their uniforms' badges glowed with strange symbols, marking their rank in the Empire's vast military structure. "Let them be overconfident," Stone replied, his voice low. "It's the first mistake of every empire that's ever fallen." The meeting room had been prepared according to Earth's highest security protocols. Hidden sensors analyzed every molecule of air around the Imperial representatives. Quantum computers recorded and processed their every movement, every sound they made. The lead Imperial, who called himself High Commander, spoke first. His universal translator turned his words into flat, emotionless English. "We have reviewed your military capabilities. Your technology is quaint. You still use combustion engines, physical projectile weapons, nuclear fission. These are the tools of a species in its infancy." Wells watched the other leaders' faces. Some showed anger, others fear. But he noticed something in the High Commander's speech that others might have missed. A hint of confusion when he mentioned certain technologies. "Tell us about your quantum computing programs," the Second Imperial demanded suddenly. This one wore badges marking him as their science officer. Wells exchanged a quick glance with Stone. There it was, the first crack in their armor. They'd noticed the one field where Earth had taken a different path. "We'd be happy to discuss our public research programs," Wells replied carefully. "Though I'm sure you've already studied them during your observation period." The High Commander waved his hand dismissively. "Primitive attempts at computation. Your strongest quantum computer barely matches our simplest devices." But Wells saw it again, that slight hesitation, the almost invisible tilt of the science officer's head. They weren't dismissing Earth's technology. They were trying to understand it. After 2 hours of questions that felt more like interrogation, the Imperial team prepared to leave. They had examined Earth's visible military bases, reviewed their public weapon systems, and studied their space capabilities. Their confidence had grown with each presentation. As they walked toward their ship, Wells overheard the High Commander speaking to his science officer in what they thought was a private channel. Thanks to Earth's hidden quantum receivers, every word came through clearly. "These humans develop technology like scattered insects. No uniformity. No proper progression path. How have they not destroyed themselves?" "Their quantum research is concerning," the science officer replied. "It follows no known development pattern." "We should." The High Commander cut him off. "They launched their first space vehicle less than 200 years ago. They are children playing with toys they don't understand. Prepare the integration fleet." Back in the command center, Wells brought up the complete analysis of the Imperial team's visit. Every scanner, every hidden sensor had been recording. What they revealed was fascinating. "Look at this," he said to Stone, pointing to a complex data stream. "Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's all built on the same foundation. Every Empire system follows the same development path, the same basic principles." Stone leaned closer. "And that's their weakness." Wells nodded, a small smile forming. They've never encountered a species that developed differently. Their universal translator struggled with our quantum terminology. Their scanners couldn't make sense of our shielding experiments. They've built an empire on the assumption that all intelligent life follows the same technological path. But humanity. "We took 1,000 different paths," Wells finished. "While they were building one perfect road to the stars, We were creating highways, tunnels, bridges, and paths they've never imagined. Stone straightened up, his decision made. Prepare the quantum shield network. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity's creative spirit. As the Imperial ship disappeared into the clouds, Earth's hidden defenses continued their silent work. In bunkers deep underground, weapons the Empire couldn't understand hummed with power. The Empire thought they were facing primitive technology. They would soon learn that humanity's scattered, chaotic development wasn't a weakness. It was their greatest weapon. The world's leaders gathered in the underground command center, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Above them, through the mountain's sensor arrays, they could see the Imperial ships growing in number. The invasion fleet had arrived. Admiral Stone stood at the central command table, his fingers tracing the positions of the Imperial vessels. They've positioned themselves in a standard attack formation, just like every military manual they've ever written. Which means they're predictable, Major Wells added, bringing up the analysis of Imperial battle tactics. Their entire civilization runs on protocols and procedures. They expect us to either surrender or fight according to their rules. The President of the United States stepped forward. Then let's show them we don't play by their rulebook. What's our status? Dr. Reed, her eyes red from hours of non-stop work, looked up from her station. The quantum shield network is at 98% coverage. We've hidden the energy signatures using the methods they can't detect. As far as their scans show, Earth is completely defenseless. And our other preparations? Stone asked. Ready, Wells replied. Every nation has activated their hidden facilities. The old missile silos they detected, empty shells. Our real weapons are in places their scans can't penetrate. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The Chinese premier's voice came through the comm system. Then it's time for our response. One chance to warn them. One chance to walk away. Stone nodded, turning to the communications officer. Send the message. All frequencies, all languages, using their own transmission protocols. The room fell silent as the message was prepared. No long speeches, no complicated diplomacy, just a simple truth that the Empire needed to understand. The message went out in every human language and the Empire's own communication format. Look up our history. Look up what happened to every force that tried to conquer us. This is your only warning. For several long minutes, there was no response. The Imperial ships hung in the sky like dark stars, their massive forms casting shadows on the clouds below. Then the High Commander's reply came through. The translator rendered his laughter into an electronic crackle that filled the command center. Your species still fights with projectile weapons and primitive nuclear devices. Your warning is noted and dismissed. Prepare for integration or face immediate military response. Stone looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each world leader present. They're doing exactly what we expected. They're following their standard protocol for dealing with primitive resistance. Show them what primitive looks like, the President ordered. Wells activated the Global Defense Network. Across the planet, hidden quantum transmitters powered up. The technology was unlike anything the Empire had encountered, not because it was more advanced, but because it was fundamentally different. They're scanning us, Dr. Reed reported, watching the Imperial ship's energy patterns. They're looking for our defense grid using their standard detection methods. And finding nothing, Stone said with a grim smile. Because we didn't build our defenses to their specifications. We built them to be invisible to their kind of science. The High Commander's voice boomed through the command center again. Your silence is taken as refusal. We will begin the integration process. Resistance will only bring unnecessary suffering. Stone straightened his uniform and looked at the assembled leaders. Humanity has faced would-be conquerors throughout our entire history. The Mongols, the Romans, every empire that thought its superior technology or numbers meant certain victory. Each one of them learned the same lesson. And what lesson is that? Asked the Russian president, her voice steady despite the tension. That humanity doesn't follow the expected path. Wells answered. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome. Above them, the Imperial ships began moving into attack position, their weapons charging with energy that lit up the sky. They were following their standard invasion protocols, preparing to demonstrate their overwhelming power. They didn't know that Earth's quantum shield was already active, invisible to their scans. They didn't know that humanity's weapons worked on principles their science had never explored. They didn't know that their standard protocols were about to meet humanity's chaos theory of warfare. They had their warning, Stone said quietly, watching the Imperial ships maneuver. Now they get their history lesson. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the Empire was about to learn why humanity's warning should have been heeded. The sky turned purple as the Imperial ships opened fire. Thousands of energy beams, each powerful enough to level a city, streaked toward Earth's major population centers. The High Commander watched from his flagship, expecting to see the primitive world burn. Instead, the impossible happened. The beams hit an invisible wall about 50 miles above Earth's surface and simply vanished. Not reflected, not absorbed. They ceased to exist. Impossible. The High Commander slammed his fist on his command console. Scan the planet again. Find their defense system. In the underground command center, Major Wells allowed himself a small smile. They're hitting the quantum shield with everything they've got. And they still can't understand why their weapons are failing. Admiral Stone nodded, watching the tactical display. Because they're looking for technology they understand. Dr. Reed, are we ready for Phase 2? Dr. Reed's fingers flew across her console. Quantum entanglement weapons are charged. They won't see this coming, literally. The particles don't exist until the moment of impact. Above them, the Imperial fleet continued their assault. Their ships moved in perfect formation, following battle plans that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Energy weapons fired in synchronized patterns, probing for weaknesses that didn't exist. Their shields operate on standard energy deflection, Wells explained to the gathered leaders. They've never encountered weapons that ignore the concept of physical space. Stone pressed his palm against the command console. Launch counterstrike. Target their 3 largest ships. Across the globe, hidden facilities activated. Deep within the Earth, quantum accelerators spun up to speeds that defied traditional physics. The weapons they fired didn't travel through space. They simply appeared inside their targets. The first Imperial capital ship exploded without warning. No incoming fire, no energy signature, just a catastrophic failure that ripped the massive vessel apart from the inside. Before the High Commander could process what had happened, 2 more capital ships erupted into balls of plasma. How? The Imperial science officer screamed, his translator barely keeping up with his panic. There were no projectiles, no energy beams. Nothing touched our shields. In the command center, Dr. Reed explained what they were seeing. Our quantum weapons don't travel through space. The entangled particles materialize directly inside their ships, bypassing their shields completely. You can't stop something that doesn't exist until it's already past your defenses. The Imperial fleet's perfect formation broke for the first time in their history. Ships began moving erratically, trying to avoid weapons they couldn't see or detect. Their sensors, designed to detect every known form of attack, showed nothing but empty space. Send them another message, Stone ordered. The communication was brief. This is what happens when you judge a species by your own limitations. The High Commander's response came quickly, his voice losing its mechanical calm. What sorcery is this? What trickery are you using, primitive ones? No sorcery, Wells replied, his voice steady. Just human ingenuity. While you were perfecting one path to the stars, we were exploring every possible road. Your sensors can't detect our weapons because you never imagined technology could work this way. Another Imperial ship exploded, its reactor core breached by particles that ignored the laws of space the Empire understood. The mighty fleet, terror of 1,000 worlds, began to retreat from weapons they couldn't comprehend. They're pulling back, Dr. Reed reported, watching the tactical display. Their entire attack strategy relied on overwhelming our defensive capabilities. They don't know how to fight an enemy they can't understand. Stone watched as the Imperial ships broke orbit, their retreat as chaotic as their arrival had been ordered. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "Once they analyze what happened here, they'll try again." "Let them come," Wells replied. "Every time they attack, they'll face something new." Humanity didn't develop in a straight line like their civilization. We built our technology like we built our cultures, in 1,000 different ways, testing every possibility, keeping what worked regardless of whether it fit the expected pattern. As the Imperial fleet disappeared into deep space, Earth's leaders stood in silence, watching the tactical display show their first victory against the galaxy's greatest power. They had done the impossible, not through superior technology, but through thinking in ways the Empire never imagined possible. The first battle was over. The war for Earth's freedom had just begun. The High Commander stood before the Imperial War Council, his proud shoulders bent with the weight of defeat. The massive chamber, with its towering crystalline walls, had never before heard a report of failure. "How?" demanded the first speaker, his voice echoing through the chamber. "How did a primitive world defeat our finest fleet?" On the massive display behind them, images of Earth's history played out. The Council had finally begun proper research into human development, and what they found disturbed them deeply. "They are different," the High Commander admitted. "Unlike any species we have encountered in 10,000 years of expansion." In Earth's command center, Major Wells and Admiral Stone watched the Imperial transmission they had intercepted. Dr. Reed's quantum decryption algorithms had broken their supposedly unbreakable codes within hours. "They're finally doing their homework," Wells said, pointing to the historical images the Empire was studying. "Look at what they're focusing on." The Imperial display showed scenes of human warfare through the ages: spears against swords, arrows against armor, muskets against cavalry, tanks against trenches, and each time, the supposedly inferior technology finding ways to triumph. "Their entire civilization is built on constant warfare," the Imperial science officer reported to the Council. "Not organized, standardized combat like ours. Their wars were chaos. Hundreds of nations, thousands of cultures, each developing weapons and defenses in different ways." Stone nodded grimly. "They're beginning to understand. Every other species they encountered developed like they did, one unified path to the stars. But humanity. We took every path," Wells finished. "When they were perfecting energy weapons, we were exploring quantum mechanics, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and 100 other directions at once." The Imperial War Council watched in growing horror as their analysts explained the truth about Earth's technological development. The first speaker's voice shook with disbelief. "You mean to tell me they developed spaceflight before they had unified global communication? They created quantum computers while still using internal combustion engines. This defies all natural progression laws." "That's exactly what makes us dangerous to them," Dr. Reed explained, watching the transmission. "Their civilization is built on order, on following the proven path. Humanity is built on chaos, on trying everything at once and keeping what works." On the Imperial display, scenes of human adaptation played out. Cities rising from atomic ashes, nations rebuilding after devastation, armies learning from defeat and coming back stronger. "Their quantum shield technology," the science officer continued. "It works on principles we never considered because they violate the standard laws of scientific progression. Their weapons exist outside normal space because they never accepted our limitations on what was possible." Wells brought up Earth's defense grid on their own display. "We didn't build better versions of their technology. We built different technology entirely. That's why their sensors can't detect our weapons. They're looking for improvements to their own designs, not completely different approaches." The first speaker stood, his decision made. "We must adapt our strategy. Prepare the entire Third Fleet. We will overwhelm them with—" "Sir," interrupted the science officer, "you don't understand. Traditional overwhelming force won't work. Look at their history. The more force used against humans, the more creative their resistance becomes. They don't fight harder, they fight differently. Admiral Stone watched the Imperial Council's growing realization with grim satisfaction. They're learning what every would-be conqueror of Earth has learned. You can't defeat humanity by following a rulebook, because we'll always find a way to change the rules. In the Imperial Chamber, the first speaker received another report that made his hands tremble. They've begun adapting our own technology now, taking our designs and changing them, making them work in ways that should be impossible. That's humanity's greatest strength. Well said to the watching Earth leaders. We don't care about should be impossible. We try it anyway. And when it works, we build on it, combine it with other impossible things, and create something new. As the Imperial War Council descended into chaos, humanity continued preparing. In labs and workshops around the world, scientists and engineers took what they'd learned from the first battle and began creating new impossibilities. The Empire had finally realized the truth. They weren't fighting a primitive species. They were fighting humanity's greatest weapon, infinite adaptability. Operation Scattered Thunder began at dawn. Across the globe, Earth's hidden weapons platforms activated simultaneously. Each one used different technology, different principles, different impossible ideas that the Empire's sensors couldn't understand. Admiral Stone stood at the command center's main display, watching the Imperial fleet approach. They had brought 3 times as many ships as before, thinking numbers would make the difference. They still don't get it, Major Wells said, shaking his head. They think more of the same will work against us. Dr. Reed's voice came through the comm system. All systems ready. Quantum weapons primed. Nuclear quantum hybrid missiles in position. Gravity disruptors online. Time dilation fields charged. The Imperial fleet moved into attack formation, their ships creating a perfect geometric pattern in space. Their new tactics were just variations of the old ones. More ships, more weapons, more power. Begin Phase 1, Stone ordered. The first wave of Earth's attack didn't look like an attack at all. Quantum particles appeared inside Imperial ships, but instead of exploding, they started changing the way time moved. Some sections of their ships began moving faster than others. Metal twisted as different parts of the same ship experienced time at different speeds. What sorcery is this? The High Commander's panicked voice came through their intercepted channels. Our ships are being torn apart by nothing. Wells smiled grimly. That's what happens when you combine quantum mechanics with Einstein's theories in ways they never imagined possible. Phase 2, Initiate. The second wave demonstrated humanity's talent for combining technologies. Nuclear missiles, cloaked in quantum fields that ignored normal space, appeared inside the Imperial fleet's formation. But these weren't normal nuclear weapons. They had been modified with Empire technology that Earth had captured and altered. When they detonated, they didn't just explode. They created bubbles of altered space where gravity stopped working, then reversed, then multiplied. Imperial ships were crushed, then torn apart, then pulled into microscopic points of infinite density. Impossible, screamed the Imperial science officer. They've combined their primitive atomic weapons with quantum mechanics and gravity manipulation. These technologies aren't meant to work together. Dr. Reed's voice was calm as she reported, Phase 3 ready, activating the gravity web. This was humanity's masterstroke, a network of devices that changed the way space itself worked. They had taken the Empire's gravity technology, combined it with Earth's quantum research, added principles from a dozen different scientific theories, and created something entirely new. The space between the Imperial ships began to twist. Their perfect formation became their perfect trap as the altered space created connections between points that shouldn't exist. Ships trying to escape found themselves moving toward the center of the formation instead. Weapons fire curved back on their own vessels. This defies all known laws of physics. The High Commander shouted as his flagship began to break apart under forces his sensors couldn't even detect. "That's the point," Stone said, though only Earth's leaders could hear him. "We never accepted your laws. We made our own." The Imperial fleet's mighty formation collapsed into chaos. Ships fired blindly at enemies they couldn't understand, using tactics that had worked for 10,000 years against enemies that had followed the same rules. But humanity had never followed the rules. Another wave of quantum nuclear hybrid weapons appeared inside the Imperial formation. More ships vanished into points of infinite gravity. Others were torn apart by time, moving at different speeds through their hulls. Some simply ceased to exist as quantum effects erased them from normal space. "They're retreating," Wells reported, watching the tactical display. "No, they're running. This isn't a tactical withdrawal. They're in full retreat." The mighty Imperial fleet, terror of 1,000 worlds, fled from Earth's space. Their perfect formations were gone, their confidence shattered, their understanding of what was possible completely broken. Stone watched them go, his expression grim but satisfied. "Send the final message." Earth's transmission reached every surviving Imperial ship. "Remember this day. Remember what happened when you tried to conquer a species that never learned to follow your rules. Remember why we warned you." As the last Imperial ships disappeared into deep space, humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had not just defeated the Empire, they had shattered its belief in its own superiority. The war wasn't over, but the turning point had come. The galaxy would never be the same. The Imperial Palace had never been so quiet. 3 months after their defeat at Earth, the Empire's rulers gathered to sign something they had never imagined possible: a peace treaty with a primitive world. Admiral Stone and Major Wells stood before the Imperial Council, their simple Earth uniforms standing out among the elaborate Imperial robes. Behind them, holographic displays showed the devastation from the battle, the wreckage of over 300 Imperial warships drifting in Earth's orbit. "You understand what this means?" the first speaker asked, his voice having lost its previous arrogance. "No species has ever forced the Empire to recognize them as equals." "We're not asking to be recognized as equals," Stone replied calmly. "We're telling you that we're claiming our place in the galaxy. You can accept it, or we can demonstrate our capabilities again." In the background, Dr. Reed's voice came through their secure quantum communicators. "They've signed. The transmission is going out to every world in their empire now." The treaty was simple. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign power. The Empire would stay out of the solar system. And most importantly, they would acknowledge humanity's right to develop technology in their own way. "We still don't understand," the Imperial science officer admitted, looking at the data from the battle. "Your quantum weapons shouldn't work with nuclear technology. Your gravity manipulators shouldn't interface with time dilation fields. None of this should be possible." Wells smiled. "That's because you're still thinking like the Empire. You believe there's only one right way to advance, one correct path of development. Humanity proved there are infinite paths." Back on Earth, celebrations broke out across the globe. The news broadcasts showed scenes from every continent, people cheering, dancing, celebrating not just their survival, but their triumph. In the command center, the world's leaders gathered one last time to hear the Empire's final transmission. The High Commander's face appeared on the main screen, his expression a mixture of respect and lingering confusion. "We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, he said. "We have encountered 1,000 species, conquered 100 worlds. But never, in all our history, have we faced a species like humanity." "Because you never looked for one," Stone replied. "You assumed every intelligent species would follow the same path you did. You forgot that true intelligence means finding new paths." The High Commander nodded slowly. "Our scholars are already studying your history, how you turned defeat into victory, weakness into strength. How you developed technologies that should have been impossible because you never learned they were impossible." "And what have you learned?" Wells asked. That the greatest power in the universe isn't superior technology, the High Commander answered. It's the ability to think in ways that have never been thought before. The transmission ended, and Earth's leaders turned to their next task. The planet's defensive systems were being upgraded with hybrid technologies, combinations of human innovation and captured Imperial tech. Scientists around the world were already exploring new possibilities, new impossible ideas. "What's the status of the space program?" Stone asked, turning to Dr. Reed. She brought up new schematics on the main display. "We've adapted the quantum drive technology from their ships, but in typical human fashion, we're not just copying it. Our engineers have found ways to combine it with our own theoretical work. The first Earth ships will be ready within a year. And they'll be unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen," Wells added. "Not because they're more advanced, but because they're different, because they're human." Stone looked at the schematics, at the impossible combinations of technologies that simply worked because humanity didn't know they shouldn't. "Send a message to every research facility. Tell them to keep pushing boundaries. Keep trying the impossible. That's what saved Earth, and that's what will carry us to the stars." As the sun set on humanity's first day as a recognized galactic power, the message was clear. Earth hadn't just survived an Imperial invasion. They had changed the galaxy forever. They had shown that there wasn't one path to the stars, but infinite paths, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to try the impossible. The Empire had set its sights on Earth, expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened humanity's greatest strength, the power to imagine new possibilities and make them real. And now, the stars were waiting.